Hello and good morning, everybody. I'm Bruce Feldman. I'm a principal consultant at Lowfeld Consulting Group. I'm the lead instructor for our training program on using generative artificial intelligence to do proposal work. And I'm here today with my co-conspirator, Christian Ferreira, CEO and co-founder of Procurement Sciences. Our focus today is how Lowfeld Consulting and Procurement Sciences have come together to establish a secure AI platform with segregated data environments where we both support client proposals and provide training on how to use generative artificial intelligence to do proposal work. Now, personally, I've been doing business development, capturing proposal work for over 30 years. So I'm here really speaking from the user side on how we can speed up and reduce the cost of doing proposals using generative artificial intelligence. I want to give you some thoughts on the what, how, and wow of using generative AI to do proposal work, some observations and lessons learned. When I'm done speaking about halfway through, Christian's going to take over. He's going to talk to you about the environment we work in and the software platform we're using to do this. At Lowfeld Consulting Group and Procurement Sciences, we've come to the conclusion that the application of generative artificial intelligence to proposal development, I don't mean to just limit it to proposal development, it also includes pre-RFP work as well, will help you get your proposal work done faster, better, and cheaper. We estimate a 30% reduction in proposal time and proposal cost. But to do that, you have to have effective tools and people who know how to use them. Now, I know there are a number of companies out there developing proposal platforms using generative artificial intelligence. They have canned prompts that let you push a button to generate response and content, which is certainly very powerful. Personally, I'm not certain yet that we are with the current generation of platforms ready to rely exclusively on those canned prompts. There is so much variation, as I'm sure many of you know, in RFP structure, customer preference, best practice, how companies want to operate, and there are inherent limitations in the generative AI tools as well. So the human element is still essential, which is why we believe that we can certainly speed up and reduce the cost of proposal work, but this is going to be a tool that accompanies our proposal professional. It is certainly no replacement for the human beings who know how to do this sort of work. Still, we see potential for significant gains, both in the relatively well-structured work we do in the proposal room, where we have a compliance matrix, we have proposal inputs, we have solution content, we have reuse of information, as well as relatively unstructured work, such that we do in the pre-RFP stage, where we're much more research and analysis oriented. That's not to say we don't do research and analysis during the proposal. Of course, we have to respond to the ultimate statement of requirements we get in the solicitation, but pre-RFP is much more research and abstract oriented. Generative AI has broad application there as well. Now, it is worth noting that there's a potential for the emergence of have and have not classes of users. The largest companies may choose to absorb the cost of configuring their data environment to meet their CIO standards and maximize their return on investment. But it's worth noting that the cost to build a large, complex Gen AI like ChatGPT is estimated to have cost more than $100 million. The cost to run ChatGPT alone is roughly $700,000 per day. That's a lot of cost for any one entity to absorb. So we believe that a number of business models are going to emerge from this, where you can acquire support for proposal development using Gen AI on an as-a-service or some other basis that enables any user to have access to the capability. And those business models will emerge over time. Because there are going to be, ultimately, I believe, in my opinion, a relatively small number of foundational Gen AI models, and then we'll have a variety of ways to pay for that service. So I'm sure you're all aware that generative AI has really accelerated up the hype cycle here in the last 12 months or so. Really, the high-powered current generation of Gen AI really has only emerged in the last 12 months or so. Now, personally, I'm an evangelist for using Gen AI for GovCon-related work. I can see a day when its impact will be just as profound as transitions we underwent in the industry. 30 years ago, we started putting computers on everyone's desk. When we started having a suite of office products that do word processing, spreadsheets, databases, all integrated on that computing system, and changes such as making the internet routinely available and part of our normal workflow in doing business for communicating, for acquiring and manipulating and disseminating data. But every one of these changes came with costs and limitations. So Lowfeld Procurement Sciences earlier this year set out to understand how we will need to evolve the proposal development discipline associated with using Gen AI in these new environments, in this new world stage that we have. So one of the things we learned immediately is that we can certainly expand the power of Gen AI by giving users the ability to respond to established best practices. part of what you're going to see in the demonstration today, for example, is just an Ask Lofeld tool that provides the Lofeld best practice body of knowledge and makes it available to the users working in the particular environment that we've set up. Now, these best practices from Lofeld are a slice of just the best practices that are out there that are available to any user in the GovCon universe. So the APMP has an enormous established library of best practices. But the idea is to make this information readily available and fully integrated into your Gen AI environment. So you can structure prompts and you can interrogate the Gen AI and solicit responses that conform to your best practices. So we chose Ask Lofeld. You may choose something else, and that's okay. But the main thing that we talk about is that your Gen AI is going to need access to your proprietary data. You have to have a corporate environment in which you feel that your corporate data is secure. I say you feel, by that I mean meets your standards for protecting your proprietary data. So you can look for past performance, proof points, other data, but that's even too limiting. You're going to want to be able to have access to the internet. You're going to have access to best practices in ways that enhance the productivity of your people to reach that 30% cost and time savings that is potentially available to you. So you'll see as we come to the end of the presentation today, a demonstration of Procurement Science's bidding intelligence system that is used in the Lofeld Generative AI Proposal Development Center, or the AI-PDC, that you'll see on subsequent charts. So this is a visualization of the client-tenant model that we have. We have a set of segregated environments, each of which has data within it that is protected from corruption, protected from leakage, is not directly accessible to the internet through the Gen AI. We have a training tenant, which is separated from individual client tenants. And what you'll note here on the left side of the chart as well is that each of these tenant environments requires system administration support. That shouldn't surprise you. Each one has its own instance of a generative AI platform. We believe you're also going to need an engagement success manager and AI-trained proposal professionals until your teams of people come up to speed and understand how best to use Gen AI to achieve the maximum productivity gains and cost improvements that we believe are deliverable with Gen AI. In other words, you can have the capability, but your people will need to be trained in order to use it successfully. For that to happen, we believe you will need assistance along the way as your people ascend the learning curve. So engagement success and AI proposal assistance, we believe, is essential. We believe, absolutely, we are convinced that the AI-trained proposal professional can readily outperform somebody who chooses to do proposal work without the assistance of Gen AI. It's a very powerful tool that will be in your toolbox. So the architecture supports segregation of the client data. That's absolutely essential, but it also provides the assurance, as I mentioned a moment ago, that your data won't be leaked or corrupted externally. Your data won't have access through the Gen AI onto the internet. But people working in the environment certainly can execute a search prompt out to the internet, pull data back in that is then input to the Gen AI. So it's a very different intuition and sense than having a Gen AI go out and actually talk to the internet. That doesn't happen in the environment. We go out, we do semantic search, pull data back in that is then put into the Gen AI. And again, it's important to note that the large language models in generative AI are not learning models. They don't learn, they are trained, and they are fixed once completed. They're not deterministic, they are stochastic. There's software involved that gives them a probabilistic aspect, but they are not communicating directly with the internet. I think that's a key point for both lay and technical personnel. So there are a number of custom AI-powered tools for proposal development in the environment. Gen AI can do a lot of things. So we've created a number of AI-assisted tools that bring a little bit of specialization to a variety of the tasks that you would typically do in a proposal development environment. I already mentioned the Ask Lofeld tool. That's actually a search engine-driven tool. It's not Gen AI. But several of these tools are generative AI-driven or assisted capabilities. So one of the key lessons that we've learned through the process of doing proposal work in the environment is that you can use these custom AI-assisted tools in a complementary fashion. You can have one tool generate content, you can have another tool do the evaluation, you can have a third tool do modification of content. You don't need to write a suite of enormously complex prompts to get a single Gen AI engine or Gen AI interface to do everything you might want. You can specialize the tools so that each of them is customized to give you the output that you need or desire in order to do this as efficiently as possible. So if you're going to use Gen AI to generate content, wouldn't you also like to be able to do Gen AI to check that your content is compliant and responsive? And don't you want it to give recommendations for improvement? And don't you want to use the Gen AI to revise the content, to respond to those recommendations, or for you to edit them, or for you to delete them, or for you to add to them? All of these capabilities need to be present. We found that using these tools in a complementary fashion speeds up the process and delivers the kind of productivity gains that we're looking for. Now, as much as we talk about Gen AI generating content, as much as we've talked about so far, it's important to note that Gen AI can also search, analyze, extract, compare, critique, and summarize. It's enormously powerful. It can do a lot of different things. So really part of the challenge is staging the interface to the Gen AI to enable your people to come up the learning curve on how to engage with the Gen AI as productively and as quickly as possible. So the number of best practices that Lowfeld has established, we call them strength-based winning techniques designed to drive up your win rate. You can see a small sampling of some of those techniques on the left-hand side of the chart visible to you here. On the right-hand side of the chart are the combination of tools that we use in the environment in order to perform these sorts of tasks. And I'm going to step through each of these a little bit briefly. But the point is that it's the complementary use of the tools as well and the customization you can give each tool that really renders it powerful, because now we're not asking our proposal professionals to become masters of highly sophisticated prompt engineering. It really simplifies the way the work gets done. So I'm going to give you some very specific use cases on how we do this and the benefits that you'll gain from doing it. So those 5 techniques I showed you a moment ago, the first one was strength-based solutioning approach. As shown on the left-hand side of the chart here, strength-based solutioning is a technique that is largely, but not entirely, done pre-RFP in order to find the solution in your offering. So you're trying to build up your portfolio and understanding of strengths that you're going to bid in order to outscore your competitor in a best value environment, best value selection environment. So you identify features, benefits, proof points. And again, this is all extracted and contained in Lowfeld-based training, which is a subject for another day. So we have the right side of the chart showing different ways to use generative AI to uncover and present those strengths and ultimately transfer them into your proposal. So as I mentioned before, pre-RFP, you might conduct a workshop with subject matter experts. You might mock up requirements, identify potential evaluation criteria, go out and do research on company offerings to identify features that you could then incorporate in your proposal in response to what you project to be the likely RFP requirements. You can then do the research on those features to quantify benefits, identify proof points in your holdings, past performance, and CPARs and other locations like that. And then at that point, you have the beginnings of a robust solution that will hopefully score well against the solicitation. When the solicitation comes out, you can then readjust the model of what is in the RFP, evaluation criteria and PWS requirements, modify your solution space so you are delivering a feature-rich proposal that will generate significant scoreable strengths and lead to a winning outcome. Now, I mentioned before that you know that solution development needs to be done pre-RFP, because again, when the RFP is out, generally speaking, you're on the clock. You have a limited amount of time to generate the winning proposal package. So Gen AI supports the productivity and speed enhancement to go from solution to pre-RFP, modify it to the actual as-is RFP requirements, make the necessary adjustments and additions, and get them into your proposal content to generate that winning volume or volumes. Another key aspect of proposal development is proposal design. I'm not just talking about the layout on the page, although that is certainly a critical part of it. Certainly, it is a truism of our business that proposal evaluators don't read, they score. It's essential that we design our proposals to make it easy for evaluators to find and award the strengths in our offering. So I mentioned page layout. That is certainly one key area of the proposal, but really it's about the entirety of the cues, that visual cues that we give the evaluators to steer them to our features and the associated information. We want to encourage evaluators to readily see the value we offer in excess of the evaluation criteria in order to be scored strengths. We can use generative AI to suggest ideas for how to visualize concepts, what to put in a figure caption, how to build a proof point. We can also use Gen AI to look at previous proposals and debriefs. I'll talk about that more in just a moment here, to flag items for reuse, to identify areas where there's a lack of visualization and lack of input, and remedy those in the proposal structure definition process. Now, when I talked a moment ago about proposal design, that's really part and parcel of drafting your proposal to the evaluators. Now, a key thing that I think most companies do, and all should, is create a knowledge management system repository of their past proposals, their award notifications, their CPARs, their debriefs, all the feedback they're getting both on execution as well as on proposal content. You build that registry of information in order to build a strengths registry. What are capabilities that your company has proposed in the past that have been scored strengths, where an evaluator has recognized the value of what you have to offer? That is a key feature for reuse of capability. Gen AI can enable you to reduce the amount of time and cost you spend maintaining and building a company repository of information. You can use semantic search and couple it with Gen AI to search your company repository to find those strengths that would then be most well aligned to your proposal offering. You can also go back and look for items that you thought would be strength and did not score, and try to understand what it would take in order to bolster those features so that they will score strengths on the next go round. So once you've done that, you've built this historical scoring record. You can now go in and do root cause analysis on why things score well and why they don't, make those corrections and those adjustments, and then create a significant reuse library of strengths for incorporation into your bid. Now, this doesn't replace strength-based solutioning. You still have to come up with new capabilities, new offerings, new solutioning, because again, we and our competitors are all evolving all the time, adding new capabilities. You don't want to be stagnant, but on the other hand, if you have strengths that have scored well in the past, it is certainly worth considering whether or not to use them again in the future. And Gen AI can facilitate your ability to understand your company's record, reduce the time and effort to search that repository, and identify strengths for immediate reuse in a current bid. Now, every company's got best practices proposal reviews. It's my opinion that a new best practice is emerging. I don't know if it's here yet, on using human and generative AI to perform parallel reviews of proposal content. One of the things you may notice about human reviewers is they tend to get bogged down in the narrative. What the customer is interested in is skimming the proposal, finding the strengths and weaknesses, and scoring. They're not reading the narrative. I mean, certainly the narrative makes an impression, an important impression. Certainly well written, in one voice, proper style and format is very, very important for the subliminal impression that it makes. But on the other hand, our job here is to deliver in the package items that will score. So human reviewers tend to get bogged down in the narrative. They're worried about the flow of the sequence of the narrative, how does the narrative feel and look, and that's certainly of value in the feedback process. But in the early reviews, we need human reviewers to focus on, will we score well? And that's often a challenge. On the other hand, we can prompt generative AI to look at proposal content and ask it, will it score well? And generative AI will not be distracted by the narrative. We can take the outputs then from these two parallel processes and compare them. And I believe extract the best of both in order to give the most meaningful and concise feedback to the proposal team. And for those of you who've been through very complex large proposals, you can receive thousands of comments from reviewers, which you then have to each individually dispose of and address. In order to mitigate that problem, we can use Gen AI to look at the differences, identify the most salient points, and prioritize those for the proposal writers as well. So another significant saving of time and effort is available to us by using Gen AI to help with the review. We can use Gen AI to review certainly for compliance. Have we responded to every shall, will, must statement in the proposal in early stages? We can look at whether or not features are apparent and we are providing, if not the facts, at least the space and the location for statement of proof and benefit, risk and risk mitigation. We can ask it to identify weaknesses. And then in the final reviews, we can ask Gen AI to help us establish one voice with consistent language and narrative tone that creates the most positive impression on the customer, on the evaluator. Now, there already are AI-assisted tools out there to check for compliance or responsiveness. That's, I think, a very powerful thing right off the bat to make sure that you are fully responsive to the solicitation requirements. But that's really only the starting point on the path to delivering that compelling winning proposal. And again, I won't overlook the fact Gen AI can be used to review writing. It can find grammar, syntax, voice. Part of it is, are we using the customer's language? We can look for words in a solicitation to make sure those are the same words we use in a proposal. For example, so we are speaking to the customer in exactly the terms they use in their everyday language. It's a mistake, and a common one, for us to be so enamored of our own capabilities that we use our language instead of tailoring our language to the customers, how they speak. Another technique that Lofeld recommends is improving your lessons learned process. Every proposal debrief, and for every awarded proposal, CPARs and customer feedback on our performance should go into a knowledge repository. Once that data is in there, it doesn't have to be in a relational database. It could be unstructured data that can be searched semantically. We can then couple it with Gen AI to produce extracts for our enterprise. We can identify strengths for reuse, that strengths repository I mentioned a moment ago. We can give scoring statistics and patterns, areas where we score well, areas where we don't score well. We can identify areas we've had weaknesses and deficiencies, look for root causes and themes. We can generate AI outputs and recommendations for future bids. And again, in each of these cases, we are coupling multiple tools together in the environment in order to be as productive and as capable as possible. So just as an illustrative example, I want to let you know that this presentation was generated about 70 to 80% by a generative AI platform. I had a topic. I asked generative AI for an outline. I received an outline back. I modified the outline. I added some things, deleted things, reordered things. I then asked Gen AI for each chart, what do you recommend? It gave me its suggestions. I asked it both for word recommendations and visualization recommendations. Some I accepted, some I didn't. But I reduced the amount of time I would normally spend on a briefing of this importance and of this length, probably by about 50%, a significant savings in time and effort in order to do this. So having said all that, let's give you a demonstration of the Procurement Sciences security AI platform called Bidding Intelligence System. Let me go ahead and introduce again my co-conspirator, Christian Ferreira, who's going to take it over from here. So Christian, you're on.
Awesome. Thanks, Bruce. Well said. Very informative. Hello, everyone. My name is Christian Ferreira. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Procurement Sciences AI. A little bit about my background and how I ended up here is I did about 8 years across the board in government contracting, spent a lot of time as a solutions architect, director of business strategy, in a lot of the same positions as you all, ultimately spending many late nights, many weekends, a lot of my time responding to proposals, which is really the reason behind founding Procurement Sciences. Ultimately, it was my goal to come out here, help companies leverage the latest and greatest AI to really help you work smarter instead of harder. What I recognized was that traditional software has been around for many years. People tried to apply it to these problems that everyone has in BD capture proposals, but it really didn't make a significant dent, right? We were still spending hundreds of hours, late nights, weekends trying to solve these problems. Now I saw where AI was moving very quickly. Ultimately, AI itself has been around for about 70 years. So AI is nothing new. It's generative AI, which was that new technology that was coming up, which ultimately really trumps every type of AI that came before it, as well as just about anything that software could do up until now. So ultimately, we took AI and we started to apply it to those real pain points that I was facing, that just about everyone else in the industry was facing, to get real results and really help you apply the AI effectively. At Procurement Sciences, we are all about efficiency. We do want to clear one thing up, which is the AI is not going to take over. It's not going to be able to blindly submit proposals for you. What the AI can do is it can act as your own personal assistant, ultimately enhancing you, supercharging you, allowing the AI to do the heavy lifting, which might be the first 80, 90% of whatever task you're working on. Then that last 10, 20% is where the human in the loop needs to come in, ultimately review it, fact check it, more importantly, ensure that what you're submitting is something that your company actually can deliver if selected. So really, it's up to the human to drive it over the finish line. So a little bit about us. We are an AI software development company. We do a couple different things, but we focus on AI first development. What that means is our architectural groundwork, our frame, ultimately the foundation is built around artificial intelligence. So we start there and then we build on top of it. This allows us to build very unique solutions, very powerful solutions that just haven't been around before. Our current focus right now is primarily around really revolutionizing BD teams, capture teams, proposal teams, entire companies, ultimately anyone going after government contracts, commercial contracts, helping them use AI to kind of revolutionize their processes. We offer both standard solutions that come right off the shelf. We also do custom AI solution development for clients looking for purpose-built solutions. Currently, we are debatably, if not the leader in generative AI solutions in government contracting. We work with over 50 different businesses right now. Ultimately, we call ourselves partners as we look at ourselves as more than just a software provider. We really get in deep. That's why I work with Lofeld. Ultimately, our mutual goal is to ultimately make sure that these companies adopt AI into their workflows and use it effectively and safely. We work with everyone ranging from top 10 government defense contractors all the way through the mid-sized companies trying to compete in the full and open market into early stage companies just trying to break the barrier of entry and really start to scale. A little bit about our solutions. So ultimately, we like to think of ourselves as being at the tip of the spear of AI technology. We like to think of ourselves as the trailblazers, ultimately taking the new era of AI technology that is constantly developing, constantly having new breakthroughs, and then applying that into solutions that are domain specific for the different verticals that we operate in. That being said, we are not a static product, meaning that ultimately we are constantly developing new tools, new features, again, leveraging those breakthroughs and then applying that to, again, the biggest pain points that you face in BD capture proposals. Currently, our goal is ultimately to really revolutionize the industry by building an end-to-end solution, which again helps you from finding opportunities to matching to opportunities to rapidly evaluating the bid, no bid decisioning, to solutioning, to responding, to fine-tuning, to checking to compliance, to even post-win-loss analysis, identifying strengths, weaknesses, and then rolling that back into a continuous motion. Ultimately, we use large language models. So with generative AI, a large language model is the engine behind the AI. So ultimately, that's what powers it. Ultimately, for most of our customers, the majority of them, they're going to leverage our solution offerings around the pre-trained and fine-tuned model options. What a pre-trained, fine-tuned model is ultimately Bruce was kind of alluding, which is we leverage the big companies like Microsoft, Google, AWS, OpenAI. Ultimately, we have the ability to use those large language models they've invested hundreds of millions, coming up on billions of dollars into to build these very, very powerful engines. So we leverage those. We have ways to use them securely where your information is not going to be at risk of public training or being leaked to those larger companies. And then on top of that, what we do is we build very specialized algorithms. So the algorithms we use, they're called like RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation, semantic searching, things on those lines. Bruce kind of touched on that, but what it does is it allows you to tailor the AI to your company. So, you don't need to go out here and train a super expensive model just on your data. Ultimately, you can leverage the huge heavy lift these big companies have done, but then use the algorithms that we've designed where you can use your own company information so that the AI knows your styles, knows your tones, understands you, and understands what your company has done and is capable of doing. This is very important because ultimately it avoids you having to pay these massive costs of training a private model, but ultimately, again, it still protects your data, but it also allows you to go out there and get rapid value. So you don't need AI 3 to 6 months down the road. Ultimately, you can apply the AI within the same day, get up and running, and have an AI model that truly understands you and can use your information. So high level on the platform security, we offer both hosted solutions as well as on-prem offerings. So the Lofeld AI Proposal Development Center is a hosted solution by default. Ultimately, what that means is that it's maintained by our internal team and then industry experts. So just like we leverage AWS, Google, OpenAI models, those big $100 million models they've built, we leverage their cloud offerings as well. These companies have already paved the way where they've invested billions of dollars into the most advanced cloud security, hardened architectures, heavily penetration tested, with layers of security implemented through the entire environment. Within the actual system itself, so the mothership, we follow all the industry best practices. So we ensure data separation where your information is not commingled with other tenants. We ensure encryption at transit and in rest. And then also we have privacy settings and controls built throughout the entire system. So then within your actual instance, additionally, again, we come from the industry, so we understand the importance of data security even within your company. So that's where we access and we use role-based access controls, so also called RBAC, What this does is it allows you within the company to have your own administrators that can go in there, grant permissions, grant access, allow people within your company to have access to certain files, view certain information, then have other information segregated and blocked. The solution is built, number one, around security, data privacy, security, but then also around scalability. You can come in, you can have your BD teams, your capture team, proposals teams using this today, but it will start to grow throughout your company, ultimately empowering just about everything you do from end to end. Because of that, the scalability, the flexibility of the architecture allows you to scale as you grow. Additionally, affordability. Again, we're not out here trying to gouge companies. It's very affordable to get started with AI. It's very quick to also get started with AI, where you could sign up, you could ultimately be provisioned into the system, getting value day one without having to spend $500,000 as far as trying to get AI into your infrastructures. And then lastly is around continuous innovation. So as I kind of alluded to, AI is just in its infancy stages right now, generative AI specifically. Every single week, every single month, massive breakthroughs continue to happen. So we built our system where we're able to, again, grab that continuous innovation, these continuous advancements of these large language models, how they keep building stronger and stronger, and then instantly bring that into your environments and give you access to the latest and greatest power. All right, so now we'll do a quick demo of the Lohfeld AI Proposal Development Center. So again, the Lohfeld AI Proposal Development Center is an end-to-end platform designed to help with business development, capture, and proposal workflows, leveraging the latest and greatest and most powerful generative AI. There really is no right or wrong way to use the tool. The tool itself is very flexible. Ultimately, there's many different types of ways to use the platform. All we're going to do here is show you a high-level example of a few different ways that the platform can be agnostic and really shape to your workflows and then solve some of those key pain points that contractors deal with on a daily basis. So again, it can perform a wide range of tasks. Everything from helping you find opportunities to evaluate opportunities for bid/no bid decisioning, market, competitor, agency research, rapidly drafting proposals, taking a drafted proposal and fine-tuning it, to reviewing proposals, helping check for compliance, readabilities, differentiations, and also even post-submission, helping with oral presentation prep, debrief analysis, and even more. So I'm going to do a quick demo of what the system can do. To start, it's important to note that it is very configurable. What that means is you can come in here, you can ultimately move the different panels around. So it's a panel-based system, meaning that you can adjust the different panels to your likings, really based on your workflow, your styles, how you want to use the system. From inside each panel, it's tabular-based, so you can open up the different tools and really configure it to your liking. So I'm going to do here, the first one is Ask Lohfeld. So Ask Lohfeld is an advisory bot, which is ultimately trained on the Lohfeld body of knowledge. So you can come in here, use it as your assistant, your advisor, ask questions against the Lohfeld best practices, and then get instant answers back. The instant answers that come back are going to be grounded based on the different books and methodologies from the Lohfeld Consulting Group, which you can view. Next, I can go deeper. It's conversational, meaning that I can ask the AI follow-up questions about this conversation, and it will keep digging in deeper and deeper. So here I was asking, how can I actually apply strength-based proposal strategies into my proposal itself? And very quickly, it starts to give me information based on the best practices of how to actually apply this. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close and I'm going to open up some new chat windows. This time what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to point it to my files. So this time I'm pointing it to 56 of my past performances. Now I'm going to come in here and just simply start to ask the AI questions about our information. So what I'm doing here is I'm asking the AI simply, what have we done with AI before and with what agencies? So now it's looking through all of the different past performances that I pointed it at. It's helping me sift through the data and identify our relevant past information. Again, anytime you point it at your files, it's going to show you where the information actually came from. Next, I'm going to come in here. Conversationally, I'm going to tell the AI to format this as a table. And I want the table to be laid out in a custom manner, which is the agency, the type of service, and then the value proposition that we offered to that agency. So not only can it go out there and find data, source data, structure data, and format it to your liking, it can also generate additional insights and analysis on top of that. So that's where it's generating this value proposition based on all of these different past performances that we've done. From here, I can keep going deeper. So I'm going to do next is I'm going to say, using these past performances, help me actually create an executive summary for an upcoming solicitation, specifically around an Army project with machine learning. So from here, I could keep going deeper. I could keep telling it to add more information, to make it more exciting, to change the readability levels, or I could take it and start to manually edit it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a file, so you can actually open and work with files in real time. And now what I'm going to do is just start to semantically search and ask questions against this file. So what I did was, this is a 300-page solicitation, so I'm using the AI just to ask about what the task areas are. I'm having it summarize task area 3 specifically in both a narrative as well as key points, and then help me start to build a strategy for capturing this business. I can keep going deeper. So what I'm going to do here actually is I'm going to say, okay, I have 6 weeks to respond. This is how my team composition is built out. Help me build a capture and proposal strategy over these different 6 weeks. So you can see it's going through based on the team that I told it I had. It's helping me structure a 6-week program to actually respond to this. Now I can go deeper. I could say, okay, now format this as a table to ultimately have it make it easier to read. And very quickly it actually does this for me. Now you can do this with your own outlines, you can do this with your own information so that it's more laser focused based on the methodologies that you follow, or you can use the AI's training data of all the best practices that it's been trained on. Next what I'm going to do is I open up my prompt library. So my prompt library allows me to come in here, ultimately select from either the Lofeld premium prompts or the Procurement Sciences featured prompts that are already pre-populated. There's about 50 different prompts in here, from analysis, capture, strategy, proposal writing, career development, business development, etc. Where very quickly you can come in here, select the use button, and populate that prompt into the window without any typing. Additionally, it allows you to save your own prompts and then also share them within your company so that others can leverage your prompts. So I'm going to select the use button. What's going to happen is it's going to pre-populate this prompt. In this scenario, what I'm doing is a compliance or requirements matrix. So I'm just going to paste in the requirements from the document. Very quickly, it's going to begin shredding through this compliance matrix and building it for me. Now, what's unique about this is it's also doing some custom fields. So I did the standard requirement number, verbatim requirement, and compliance-related keywords, but I also asked it to identify liability risks and also give me tips to actually respond to these different sections. So it's very customizable based on what sort of analysis, how you want it to structure, how you want it to build from the information that you give it. Now from here, you can do a lot of different things. You could start to use it to build an outline. You could start to use it to research the competitors, the agencies, the markets. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to load a new tool, and I'm going to go right into actually responding to this proposal, this RFI. So all you got to do is you would load your statement of work, your requirements matrix on the left. In the middle, you have your drafting pane, and on the right, you have your AI chat. So what I'm doing is just highlighting the requirements that I want the AI to respond to. I can go requirement by requirement. I can go section by section, and then you can go up to 20 pages of requirements at a time. So I can actually do this entire RFI at once and have it output an entire RFI, pink team, or first draft within a couple minutes. What I'm going to do is just highlight 4 requirements, tell the AI to come in here and respond to the requirements. Very quickly now it's going to go through and it's going to start to build me my first draft responses. Now, a couple things going on here is, one, you can use just its training data, which it is very powerful, and ultimately in the settings you can configure it by giving it your strategies, your strengths, your experiences, your past performances. Another way is you can extend past its training data by actually pointing the AI at some of your past performances and then having it use your past performances, your highest scoring past proposals, or any other relevant information you deem necessary to actually build these proposal drafts grounded on your information at your company. Now from here, When it's in the draft, you could do the manual editing, which is you could export this and start to manually configure it, modify the actual proposal response, or you can highlight the text and actually use the AI. So you can come in here, you can have the AI explain things to you, simplify things, convert things to bullet points. What I'm doing here is I'm telling it to actually add more detail. So it's going to rewrite this section, incorporating more information. Now, if I point it to my past files, it's going to rewrite this section, incorporating more information from my actual data that my company's done. From here, you could highlight again. You could say summarize, convert to bullet points. A lot of different things you could do at this point to ultimately keep using the AI to continue to build a very strong draft. You could also bring it over to the AI chat and ultimately have the AI apply any sort of technique to it, whether it's making it more technical, making it more simple to understand, read, compel, ultimately add more information, remove information, change tense to an active voice, etc. So you can see within just a couple seconds, you can have a very powerful first set of drafts to start to work from. Now what I'm going to do is show one more tool, which is the actual Smart Check tool. So now let's say we have our draft, and I'm a writer, and now I can use Smart Check to actually help me improve my draft and review it for me with an unbiased opinion. Another scenario here is maybe I am assigned as a reviewer, so I could actually use this to expedite my review cycles. But let's say I'm the writer, so I'm going to enter in my requirements, my responses, and then use Smart Check to actually go in there and start to Smart Check my draft. Now the first thing it's going to do is help you check for compliance. It's not meant to be a blind compliance check. What it's meant to do is be a co-pilot to help you review it. Now, any kind of feedback that the AI gives you, it's not pre-populated, meaning that we don't have a database of tips that it's going to give you reasonings behind. Ultimately, it's the AI analyzing in real time your response, comparing it to that requirement, and then it's going to give you the reasonings, the feedback to actually help you improve your scores. So first it does compliance, then it does readability, which is how well it believes the evaluator can understand what you're saying. It does completeness, which is to check if you're missing anything. It does an overall score, which is to help you kind of determine what level your response is at. It's going to identify potential risks in your response. It's going to help you build ideas to differentiate yourself. It's also going to give you smart scoring improvement tips, which is an overall kind of summary of the top 5 tips the AI recommends that you actually apply to actually build a better final product. Now, once the AI generates this, you could export this as a report and give it to your writer. You could take this and actually start to feed it back into the AI chat or into IntelliBid to actually improve your score. Or you could just use this in real time to kind of take those mental notes down to ultimately go in there and improve your draft. So again, that's a quick demo of the Lofeld AI Proposal Development Center, some of the different things it can do. Again, it's very modular. It can really be built to your needs, and really depending on the task that you're working on, you can open up those different tabs, the different tools, and apply those tools to your workflows. So at this point, I think we're ready for any sort of Q&A that wants to come up, if anyone has any questions.
Our first question for Bruce and Christian is, what are the most significant challenges to generative AI implementations at companies?
I think the most significant challenge is probably just getting started. I think that generative AI scares a lot of people. They've got a lot of bad publicity up front about, information being leaked using like public models like ChatGPT, things like that. So now there's a lot of people worried about it, right? They're very worried about, having their data being leaked, having their data being used by an AI system. I think the biggest challenge is just committing to it, understanding the privacy, the security behind it, and then getting going kind of day one, and then actually learning how to use it effectively, right? That's the other part, which is the AI, as I showed, you can do so many different types of things with the AI, but ultimately it's very important to kind of start by selecting 1 or 2 or 3 different workflows and then applying the AI directly to those workflows to get the maximum amount of efficiency back, and then start to expand it to other workflows within your company.
If I can expand on what Kristen just said a moment ago, I think the biggest challenge is going to be getting CIOs and corporate legal staff to accept that generative AI environments are secure and safe to use. I think a lot of companies are going to want to find ways to solve that challenge on premise that may or may not be cost effective for them. But I think getting buy-in from the people to who that right is reserved, and the CIO in particular, I think is really key. So you have to really get CIO involvement early to find out what is deemed appropriate for sufficient security infrastructure to do what Christian just described.
What are your thoughts on evaluators potentially utilizing a similar AI?
Well, I'll give you a couple observations. One is, I know the government is already federal government is already experimenting with using generative AI to prepare RFPs, prepare solicitations. I think that's a really positive thing, because I think we've all encountered solicitations that perhaps weren't well structured. It was hard to establish consistency between Section L, proposal instructions, Section M, evaluation criteria, and the program work statement to come up with an outline and a way to tell your story that would be consistent and easy to evaluate. It's a self-inflicted kind of a situation. So that's encouraging that there are people in the government open to doing their jobs, again, faster, better, cheaper than they could with just manual labor. I know that the government is considering using proposals to do evaluation. I don't know if they're there yet on actually using them, and I'll tell you why. Generative AI, to some extent, is still a black box. You know, the large language model inside of a generative AI is deterministic, but it is a mathematical operation machine and stateless. Stuff goes in and stuff comes out. But you can't reconstruct the input from the output. So the question then is, to what extent can you count on Gen AI to evaluate proposals? And I think, by the way, this extends to a lot of different industries that are looking at generative AI, this idea of transparency and what you're getting. I think until some mechanism is established for transparent evaluation of proposals, I think it'll be a real challenge for the government to find ways to use it that will be acceptable in a legal sense, you know, if in a protest at GAO, for example. So I think there's still real work and real hard thought that needs to be done on how to bring Gen AI into that process.
Is this software a multi-language tool?
Yeah, great question. It's actually funny. So I do know large language models are multilingual. We actually had a company approach us from Saudi Arabia, a very big company. And during a live demo, they actually said, well, most of our proposals are in Arabic. So would this work? And I said, I don't know. And we did it live, and it converted everything to Arabic, and all the responses came out in Arabic, and they were reading it, and they said, this is spot on, like perfect Arabic. So by way of training these models, they are actually multilingual based on all the training data and how they've actually been built. And again, that's really why it's powerful to leverage these massive models that OpenAI, Google, AWS, Microsoft have built, because they've spent that extra couple $100 million to make it so that it can operate in that multilingual kind of facet.
Our next audience question: how do these tools fare on pricing and right-sizing the solutions? I've found that my pricing estimates are too high, which means that I'm offering solutions that are too complex. Right now, the pricing part of the proposal process can take more than a week when I only have a day or two.
Yeah, Bruce, do you want to start with that, and I'll take the second
Yeah,
part?
first of all, we haven't gotten very far with experimenting with using generative AI to do the pricing. And by pricing, I assume what you mean is estimating the staffing required to perform each requirement. So you have a work breakdown structure. You can then translate the labor categories and level of effort into pricing. It's not doing the mechanics of pricing. By the way, and Christian, I haven't really tested this with your platform, but ChatGPT, for example, doesn't really do arithmetic. It can do it, but you have to use a plugin, like an Excel plugin, in order to actually get it to do math. So I'm not sure if you want to use it for things that are arithmetic based. Now, having said that, I'm sure you could use, and I say this, I'm sure you could use Gen AI to estimate staffing requirements, but your solution would have to be relatively well defined. You couldn't have like a general process description and then ask it, you know, how many people of each labor category, how many hours in each labor category am I going to need? I don't know if it would respond well to a situation like that, give you a high confidence answer. Christian, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's surprising how smart these large language models are and how bad they are with basic kind of arithmetic. I didn't realize what it can do. Actually, one of our directors of customer success showed me during a demo yesterday, which is you can use it for a lot of the heavy lifting for your price to win strategies, your pricing, your labor categories, things like that. When it actually comes down to the final arithmetic, I would still, doesn't matter what AI model it is, I would still highly trust the traditional kind of Excel spreadsheets to make those calculations. That being said, Bruce did bring up, there are plugins. So like the tool does have plugins where you can integrate with external sources like Wolfram Alpha. that is an arithmetic kind of model. So you can use that to kind of help you, give you kind of the background, the equations behind it. But price to win is so key to a company. Just like we say for anything the system does, 80-90% rule, that final 10%, you should be in there checking its math, reviewing it, using it on those lines.
Yeah, I want to reinforce what Kristen just said. When we do our Gen AI training for proposal people, we emphasize you can't take a generative AI output, put your name on it, and turn it in. That is, that is not the thing to do. So any Gen AI generated product must be reviewed by the writer and preferably also by a subject matter expert. You must have the human intelligence at the back end to make sure what generative AI is telling you is correct and also makes sense.
Can you speak more on the risk of data exposure, leaks, and hacks with a hosted model?
Yeah, we can dive into it a little bit deeper. Ultimately, when you use like a big model, like an Azure AI model, so they have it segregated, they have these policies that you can go on publicly, you can read about them. Ultimately, the other part is using how it's structured, what information you're giving to those models. So it's not like you're giving that model access to all of your information, dumping files in there. The algorithms are built around like vector stores. So each company starts to build their own private vector store, which has nothing to do with the model. The vector store is actually separated. It's hosted separately. Ultimately, what you're doing then is you're taking small chunks of data, anonymized data, sending it to the model's using it, and then sending back a response. There's this big misconception out there that AI, large language models, continue to learn. Hopefully I can squash that right now, is that large language models cannot continue to learn. They are fire and forget, meaning that when you tell the AI model to do something, as soon as it gives you back a response, it forgets what it was told. That's where, again, an algorithmic kind of formula comes in place, where behind the scenes, what companies do is they take the responses and they keep chaining them in a circle, and that allows it to have this facade as if it has a memory. But the truth is they're stateless. Any large language model cannot continue to learn on itself. That's also why every model is always going to have a lapse as far as training data, because you cannot continue to train them. Once you train them and put the lid on it, that's it. Your model is stateless. That's the model you're using. If you open that lid back up, it breaks apart and you need to start retraining it again.
How collaborative is the system? Can you work live in the same proposal response as your colleagues?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a whole collaboration aspect built in there. So the way it looks is you find opportunities, you put yourself onto the railroad track, and then it starts to guide you through it. So you can come into an opportunity, you can ultimately build a team, share notes, work together on the different sections, track the different tasks that everyone's working on, attach the files, kind of work together through all the different stages, and then ultimately even into post-award, having that kind of reference that you can go back into and work together on.
Bruce and Christian, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and insights on generative AI-assisted proposal development with us today, and for answering our audience's great questions. Thanks for joining us, everybody.